Find a better place, I'm sure.
I was fascinated by the magnificent sky. In fact, I took pictures of some of the great clouds. I am glad I made the long side trip here. It was time so well spent. What a wonderful rest.
Then, north on the plain, up the Pacific coast to Lima, the capital of Peru. It's a very busy city, a very, very old city, important in the history and development of South America.
This is a walking city with some very old and quaint neighborhoods. I used plenty of shoe leather looking around. Look at that exquisite arched doorway over there. It would be a big mistake to come to Lima without a camera. This pedestrian neighborhood was close to downtown. I thought that the yellow gave it a very sunny feeling. This is a government building. Classic Peruvian architecture, I would call it, with symmetry and great ornateness. I asked a passerby. He said these police were getting ready to fend off possible demonstrators. The big buildings have beautiful galleries like this. So cool. This fellow found a perfect spot to shine shoes. Watermelon vendor. I bought a thick slab, just couldn't resist. Perfect day for a watermelon. These buildings are very old. Notice the great big balconies. I think these buildings will be here a lot longer. I noticed plenty of police around. Security seems to be a great big concern.
What's more fun than sitting at a cafe and watching the people stroll by? He had a smile on, but it wouldn't be wise to give him a hard time.
When street food looks as fresh and as good as this, I'll eat it too. Haven't been sick yet. The centuries-old cathedral, typically very big and very ornate. Two competing vendors waiting for customers. They'd both be better off if one sold out to the other.
A happy scene. Mothers and children. Mothers and children are the same everywhere, I think. Next, Cusco, high up in the Andes Mountains in Peru. Ancient city dating back many centuries. Life is hard here sometimes. You do whatever you can to get by. These old houses have a new life now as restaurants and galleries and boutiques.
Everybody here works in tourism. This boy and his llama pose for pictures and collect tips.
If nobody comes for an ice cream cone, she knits and knits and knits. We're 10,000 feet high here. The air is very thin. It can be dangerous. I stayed in a tiny hotel. This was Cirillo, the all-around helper there. I was fascinated by the sturdy architecture and by the solid design of everything. This has been a street corner for centuries and centuries. Some of these people have never been in an elevator, have never traveled more than 2 hours away.
Sometimes I sneak pictures, and sometimes I cut off something important, like a fellow's eyes.
I thought I might have a heart attack on these hills, but I'm still here.
Whoops, this time I cut off the whole head. Poor guy. Look, he's in rags. The good news is that tourism has brought some prosperity. Well, for some people.
He is hoping that some kind passerby will drop a coin in his hat. Sad, isn't it? Machu Picchu, lost city of the Incas, high in the Andes. This is why I came to Cusco, to come here. This is Machu Picchu, the remnants of the village of centuries ago. Can you make it out? Enormous buildings, a full city. Look at the big chunks of block Incredible. This is one of the guys. 300,000 people come here a year to see Machu Picchu. And there are the natives of the sheep and the llamas. They're still around. They've been here since the beginning of civilization, I think. Look at the massive construction. How did they tailor and chip these blocks? The whole place is a mystery, how they managed to do all this, how they managed to build a city up here and bring water up here. Oops, this guy insisted on peeking into the picture.
I wanted to step close and pet him, but he wouldn't let me. That river way down there is the one that our train skirted to get to Machu Picchu. Look at those enormous blocks. You have to wonder where they quarried them and how they cut them so precisely and how they got them way up here. The rain came, but we just put on our ponchos and enjoyed it all. The rain seemed to intensify the color of the countryside. Look at the many terraces. They were all man-made, of course, made to provide more land for crops. We trudged from level to level, trying to check out the various sections of the ancient city. It was all very interesting, marvelous. This lovely pastoral scene made me think that maybe this is the way it was up here before the first man arrived. This is now the big and lively tourist town of Machu Picchu at the very base of the mountain. This river roaring through the town is the one we spotted from the very top of the mountain a minute ago. Beautiful, isn't it? I went into a gallery. All the artists here were brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles. Imagine 2 tourist trains to go to Machu Picchu, a big, long one just for the locals, cheap, and a short one, very expensive, just for the tourists. My fare, I believe, was about 20 times more than a local would pay on the other train. But interesting ride. Look at these kids. Imagine we were only 4 passengers on board. They're trying to earn a few pennies from us. Hard, hard life. These folks must have been waiting for the local train to stop and pick them up. I wondered if deep down they resented us wealthy tourists. A typical scene along the tracks. Imagine what it must be like in the interior of the country where there are no tourists to provide tips. I sneaked into the engineer's cab to take this picture. We are on a siding. Yes, that's the local train about to pick up these people. Delicious, very sweet. This corn had the biggest kernels I have ever seen. It pops enormously. 2 boys and their goats. Kids learn to start working very early. I think that many of them never go to school. Waiting for a bus. Look at the character in her face. Think of what she has seen and lived through. May God help the people of Peru.
Now, up to Central America, to Panama, where the Panama Canal changed the world. This is the modern Panama City.
Rod Oakes was waiting for me. He is a retired senior pilot on the canal.
That was the new Panama City. This is the old Panama City. This is a closer look at it with its attractive red roofs.
I met Luis, a former Marine. He became my guide for a day. He took me to the old fish market at the pier. Lots of fish. A bad thing happened. I lost my wallet.
This incredible gal was the day clerk at my hotel. Many of the buildings carried a lot of history.
This is the visitor center. Rod took me here. We could see the whole operation. So interesting to watch the ships go through the great Miraflores locks. As a senior pilot, Rod took hundreds and hundreds of ships through. How lucky I was to have Rod at my side to give me the play-by-play, so to speak. American workers lived in the canal zone. This was one of the buildings. Back at my hotel, I met these workers there. Lots of laughs. Another new friend. Willie went up to the States, bought cars at auction, and drove them down here for a big profit. Every day, Rod would show me around. He knows the city cold. If he didn't know something, he never hesitated to ask. Look at him here.
What's this? It's our busy American consulate.
No idea why Einstein has his head here, but it's a great picture, don't you think? San Jose, Costa Rica. Big city, small country. The country is world famous, of course, for its beauty, its diverse animal and plant life, and the terrific welcome it gives tourists. I wanted to see all this for myself. San Jose is the capital, so there are plenty of government buildings, cultural venues, and monuments. And people, so many people. Look at them crowding around these telephones. Wildlife, gosh, I began to see it right outside my hostel window. And oh, the flowers. Look at this one. And look at these. And produce. You and I, eat it all the time. This is one Costa Rican product we are all familiar with. I started out early the next morning. The day's work was starting, and I was struck by the color. So much color everywhere. I got to the nearby museum just as it was opening. Not big by our standards, but inside I was delighted. Wide-ranging exhibits and well done. About the native people before the white man came, the houses they built and how they lived, the women's favorite way of giving birth, very unusual, don't you think? The kind of family life they lived, how the Spanish came and changed everything, absolutely everything, the people's beliefs about death and the hereafter, so many of the creatures that Noah had dropped off from his ark. I saw native art. Guess what this painting was depicting? It was mid-afternoon when I finally walked out. I felt I was off to a terrific start. There are many volcanoes, some still active. A famous one is Poas nearby. I set out for it early the next morning, but our bus did not make it to the top. Big disappointment. So I signed up for a promising van excursion. First stop, a coffee plantation. We had breakfast outdoors overlooking the beautiful fields. We took a close look at the beans. And we enjoyed a fresh-made cup right there. We all pulled out our cameras when this team of oxen came along. And then a gorgeous rainbow. What a miracle. Farther along, a pretty waterfall. By lunchtime, we were becoming good friends. We got a good look at a couple of towns. To me, they were reminiscent of the 1950s. At one point, I had fun with a tarantula. On a boat ride on a jungle river, we spotted our first alligator. That was a thrill. Our boat captain kept checking for monkeys, and we saw several. I kept clicking pictures. Another camera caught me in the act. Then on a trail, the flowers were spectacular. The vegetation so lush. Look at this beauty. In another town, we spotted these people. We were told they were waiting to cash their checks. We walked around the town market. Look at this incredible bounty. I don't think anybody goes hungry in Costa Rica. And then, suddenly, it was my last day in Costa Rica and on my world trip. What a wonderful, wonderful adventure I had. I hope you will circle the globe someday. Getting to see other countries and to meet other people is so important for understanding and for peace among nations. Happy travels to you too.